Joining me now is former Republican Governor Chris Christie. He's the author of the new book, What Would Reagan Do? Life Lessons from the Last Great President. Governor Christie, welcome back to Meet the Press. Thanks for being here.
Thanks.
I want to dive right into this special counsel report that we've been talking about throughout the morning. Former Attorney General Eric Holder said this about the report, quote, way too many gratuitous remarks and is flatly inconsistent with longstanding DOJ traditions. Did this report cross any lines for you?
I don't think so. And look, I did this, as you know, for 7 years as the U.S. Attorney in the fifth largest office in the country. The fact is they had to give the reasons why they weren't prosecuting when you start off the report by saying that he willfully and knowingly retained classified documents. Well, that's a violation of the law. So the question then for the prosecutor is, then why aren't you bringing charges? And he gave two reasons, essentially. One was President Biden's memory, lack of memory, his condition. And secondly was that President Biden cooperated. Once documents were discovered, he let them go in and do whatever they needed to do to get those documents or retrieve them, as opposed to what President Trump did.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's interesting because Donald Trump called the decision not to prosecute President Biden, as you know, proof that there is, in fact, a two-tiered system of justice. Do you agree with that assessment?
No, because, in fact, if there was a two-tiered system of justice, what would have happened would have been they just would have announced that they weren't prosecuting and they wouldn't have given any of the reasons. I have to tell you the truth. In one respect, I think the Biden White House would have been happier if he had been charged than for that report to have come out in the midst of a re-election campaign. The fact is, when you're questioning what 70-some% of the American people are already questioning, whether Joe Biden is too old for the job, and now you have an independent counsel, a special counsel, appointed by his own Justice Department, concluding that he couldn't bring a trial for that reason, that's much more damaging politically than whether people would have agreed or disagreed with him being charged. And look, in the end, this is the problem. Both of these candidates are people who are being questioned for their competence and being questioned for their character. And that's a problem for the American people.
Well, speaking of which, we got a new set of comments from former President Trump overnight. He basically is recounting a story, a conversation he says he had with one of the NATO leaders about paying their fair share in the face of these threats by Vladimir Putin. Let's take a look. I'm going to get your reaction on the other side.
One of the presidents of a big country stood up and said, well, sir, if we don't pay and we're attacked by Russia, will you protect us? I said, you didn't pay? You're delinquent? He said, yes, let's say that happened. No, I would not protect you. In fact, I would encourage them to do whatever the hell they want. You got to pay. You got to pay your bills.
What do you make of that?
Well, look, this is why I've been saying for a long time that he's unfit to be president of the United States. Now, it's one thing, and I think it's right for a president to say to a NATO member, hey, you got to pay the dues you need to pay. I think the American people would expect that of a president. But the problem with Donald Trump is he can't just stop there. He's got to say, I would encourage Russia to do whatever the hell they wanted to you. That is absolutely inappropriate for a president of the United States or a candidate for president of the United States to be saying. But it is consistent with his love for dictators.
It's inappropriate. Do you think it poses a national security risk to make that kind of a comment? What
poses a national security risk is the possibility that he could be president of the United States again. Yeah. That's what poses the national security risk, because we need to take him at his word, Kristen. And the fact is that, as I've said earlier, you know, Donald Trump, when he came into office in 2016, was scared. He was afraid to be president. He was afraid of mistakes he would make. He knew he was not ready. And so as a result, he listened to a lot of very good people around him, General Mattis, General Kelly, and others, about these issues. In a second term, he would not.
Well, you, of course, dropped out of the presidential race about a month ago, but you say you are still determined to stop former President Trump to reaching the Oval Office again. How far are you willing to go to stop Donald Trump?
I'm here, aren't I? That should answer your question.
Well, have you ruled out running as a third-party candidate?
Look, I think that for anybody right now, what we should be focused on is looking at how best to serve the country. And what I was so concerned about in the primary was that our party, many of the things that I said, members of our party were saying in private all the time. And you know they say it to you, too, about Donald Trump in private. But they're unwilling to do the hard work that's necessary to get out there and do it. Listen, Kristen, the primary was over at the first debate, when 6 of the 8 people raised their hands and said they'd support him as a convicted felon.
But have you ruled out a third-party run, Governor?
Look, I can't see anybody doing that at the moment. But, you know, no one knows what's going to happen as we go forward. I've said this. Someone would have to see a path to 270 electoral votes to do it. And, you know, I haven't even taken a look at that yet. Like you said, I've only been at it a month.
Have you spoken to No Labels? They obviously are interested in you.
I have not spoken to anyone at No Labels, nor has anybody from my campaign done that.
Let me ask you, in 2016, you told wary Republicans that if they weren't working to elect Donald Trump, they were working to elect Hillary Clinton. Let me put that back to you now. If you aren't working to elect President Biden, are you working to elect President Trump, former President Trump?
No, I don't think so, because I think what we have in this race is 2 really, really bad choices.
But how's it different? Those are the choices.
It is different. It is different because this time we don't know if we're going to have a third choice or not. And so I'm not going to make any commitment. The one commitment I will make to you this morning is I'm not voting for Donald Trump under any circumstances. Now, who I might vote for, I'll wait to see the complete field before I make my judgment.
Do you rule out voting for President Biden?
I can't see myself voting for President Biden.
But you don't rule it out?
No, look, I can't see myself voting for him because I don't agree with his policies, and I have serious questions about his competence to serve another 4 years. So, do I rule it out? I can't imagine doing it. My guess is, Kristen, if those are the only 2 choices, I'll move to the Senate race in New Jersey, and that'll be my first vote.
But, you know, you keep talking about the fact that a third party likely won't get to 270. So it looks like those are going to be your 2 options. You've called Donald Trump a dictator, a threat to the democracy. So why not vote for, campaign for his alternative if your goal is to stop Trump?
If you disagree, look, you have 2 different problems here. You have someone who, in Joe Biden, who I think doesn't physically look up to serving another 4 years, whose policies I disagree with in the main. You have Donald Trump, who I agree with a number of his policies, but who I believe his character absolutely disqualifies him for the presidency. Those are 2 awful choices. And by the way, Kristen, that's what about 70% of the American people are saying right now, is they don't like either one of those choices. And so what I'd say about a third-party candidate is this. In my lifetime, I've never seen the situation more asking for a viable third-party candidate. But whether that will happen or not, I don't know.
Okay, let's talk about your new book, What Would Reagan Do? You write, at this divided, self-consumed moment in American history, what we most certainly don't need are any more visions of American carnage or a leader who promises that if given a second term, he'll be our retribution. Retribution was a word that never once entered Reagan's White House vocabulary. Can the GOP be the party of Reagan and Trump at the same time, Governor?
No, they can't be, because they can't be 2 more diametrically opposed men than Ronald Reagan and Donald Trump. Ronald Reagan saw mourning in America. Donald Trump saw American carnage. Donald Trump sees things in terms of retribution for himself. The only time retribution was ever used by Ronald Reagan is when he was going after America's enemies.
Let me ask you about something that Liz Cheney has said. She's obviously said she's determined to defeat Donald Trump as well. She thinks that House Republicans have been so co-opted by Donald Trump that it would be better to have Democrats in control of Congress. She said it presents a, quote, threat if there is a Republican majority when it comes time to certify the election. Do you agree that a Republican majority in and of itself is a threat?
Well, I'd say this. I mean, if you listen to Elise Stefanik's quotes this week of saying if she were vice president, she wouldn't have certified the election, and she's a part of House leadership, that's certainly a concern. But what I would say is I want to see who gets elected. You look at folks like Mike Lawler in New York or Mark Molinaro in New York. Those are the kind of Republicans who will be responsible about certifying an election. So I don't think they'll ever get to a majority not to certify the election.
Have you considered leaving the Republican Party?
No.
No,
I am ready to change the Republican Party. I will never stop fighting to change my party. I am a Republican, and that's what I'm going to continue to be, and I'm going to work to change the party like I did before, and I wish that more people in our party would look to do the same thing.
Very quickly on Taylor Swift, the conspiracy theories that she's somehow trying to get Biden elected.
Ridiculous. Look, Taylor Swift is one of the great American success stories. We should be celebrating her, not having all these crazy conspiracy theories, but this is the kind of thing that Donald Trump brings about.
All right. Well, I know your beloved Dallas Cowboys aren't in the game. My Eagles aren't in
Once
the game,
again,
but we'll watch anyway.
We will. Absolutely, Kristen. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here, Governor Christie. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.